next to each other. And so they look normal size in comparison to each other. In terms of their body fat percentage, it's actually very, very low.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good morning, it's 9:30 on Monday the 3rd of November, live across the UK, Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
32-year-old Anthony Williams from Peterborough has been charged with 10 counts of attempted murder following a knife attack on a train in Cambridgeshire on Saturday.
He's also charged with assault occasioning actual bodily harm and 2 counts of possession of a bladed weapon.
And breaking news this morning as a major incident has been declared in Cumbria after a train came off the tracks. The Transport Secretary, Heidi Alexander, spoke to GB News earlier.
That individual went to work on Saturday morning in order just to do his job, and he ended his shift as a hero.
We made an absolute commitment in relation to not raising tax on working people.
Well, that was Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer last year, but now the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, is set to tax workers earning over £46,000 a year in her budget.
Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, as he's to be known, will be stripped of his naval title Vice Admiral, and he could also lose his medal for serving in the Falklands War. Is that fair? US President Donald Trump spoke about it overnight.
I feel very badly. I mean, it's a terrible thing that's happened to the family. That's been a tragic situation.
This morning, Nigel Farage will set out Reform UK's plan to get a grip on the country's finances. Will the Chancellor be watching?
And sticking with Nigel Farage, do you remember the Afghan migrant who threatened to kill the Reform leader? He seems to be enjoying life behind bars by the looks of this video.
Well, Prince Andrew's story, Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor story continues.
Yeah.
Why is Donald Trump getting involved?
I know. By the way, don't take his Falklands medal off him. That is spiteful and just unacceptable. Yeah. He did his time, he served, he was brave, and he should keep his Falklands medal.
It's just this cancel culture, isn't it? The idea that if you're found guilty of something, nothing ever good that you've ever done can count for anything.
Exactly. We're crazy.
Well, hopefully the Defence Secretary will see sense on that. Well, we'll see. And we'd love to know what you think. Send your views and post your comments to
gbnews.com/your say. But first, here's your 60-second news update with Sam Francis.
Very good morning to you. 9:32, the top story this hour. A major incident has been declared in Cumbria after a train came off the tracks. Transport Secretary Heidi Alexander has said that there are no reports so far of anyone hurt. Avanti West Coast says all lines are blocked between Penrith and Oxenholme. Passengers are being told not to travel north of Preston today. In other news, a rail worker's being hailed a hero after trying to stop a knife attacker on a train from Doncaster to London. He's now fighting for his life in hospital. A 32-year-old from Peterborough is in custody on suspicion of attempted murder, though police say it's not terror-related. Around 6 million people could be affected by so-called forever chemicals found in drinking water. Several water firms have been told to take urgent action, though the water regulator insists tap water is still safe to drink at home. Experts are warning about unregulated baby scan clinics after reports today say that wrong diagnoses and missed emergencies are taking place across the country. They want tighter rules so only properly trained sonographers can offer scans to expecting mothers. Israel's confirmed the bodies of 3 soldiers have been returned by Hamas via the Red Cross. 8 hostages are still in Gaza as talks over the next stage of the ceasefire continue to stall. And in southeast Wales, a 9-month-old baby has died after a dog attack. Police have seized the animal. No arrests have been made so far. Those are your 9:30 headlines. I'll have a full roundup of all the top stories at 10.
Tune into GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player and on your smart speaker. Just say UK GB News.
Hello, good morning and welcome. You're watching Britain's Newsroom. We're live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
So that breaking news, 32-year-old Anthony Williams from Peterborough has been charged with 10 counts of attempted murder, 1 count of actual bodily harm, 1 count of possession of bladed articles after the attack aboard that train in Huntingdon at the weekend.
People have been talking a lot about knife crime and whether or not it's going up or down. And lots of people have been saying, oh, well, it's actually fallen in the last couple of years.
Well,
There's been a slight decrease, but it's up 80% in 10 years. So no wonder people are feeling like knife crime's on the rise, because it is. Yeah,
and also because now if somebody said, she stopped you in the street and said, give me your wallet, give me your watch, you think, he could have a knife.
Exactly.
It's always at the back of your mind.
Which 15 years ago, I don't think people really considered. And in London, I mean, the figures are off the charts and still going up. Well, of course, we're talking about that appalling incident that happened on the train just after Peterborough on Saturday, and the train driver who's been credited with saving lives by quickly diverting the London-bound train to Huntingdon Station after the alert was raised. He's now been identified as Andrew Johnson, and he was an Iraq war veteran.
It could explain why he was cool as cucumber and knew what to do. The train was going in another direction, diverted onto the other line so he could get off at Huntingdon, where he would have known there was a police HQ nearby. And within 8 minutes of that 999 call, the suspect was apprehended. Extraordinary.
Extraordinary response. If you think the train would have been travelling at over 100 miles an hour.
Amazing.
To make those decisions that quickly and for the police to be there waiting on the platform was quite extraordinary.
And we should think of the LNER employee who took on the knifeman. Heidi Alexander, the Transport Secretary, said she's seen CCTV footage of what happened in the carriage. She said it's remarkable. He undoubtedly saved lives by his intervention. He's still in a critical condition in hospital, but he's stable. And if he comes through this, Miriam, I think he should get an honour.
Absolutely.
A medal.
Absolutely.
A bravery, a gallantry medal.
Exactly, because it is everybody's worst nightmare. You're in an enclosed space, obviously can't get off the train, completely trapped. And some of the passengers talked about how they were running down the train, but of course got to the end and couldn't go any further. And then
some were locked in, some locked in the loo.
Yeah.
And then imagine today you're on that train which derails.
Yes.
It probably hopefully it wasn't travelling too far. What would be the first thought in your mind is, oh my God, it's a copycat. There's somebody on the train.
Absolutely. Well, let's go to our GB News Home and Security editor, Mark White, who joins us now. Mark, so we understand that this man has been charged. Do you have any more information?
Yeah, it's a major development this morning, obviously, the fact that police and prosecutors have now brought charges against this man, who has also now been named as 32-year-old Anthony Williams. The charges are 10 counts of attempted murder, 1 count of assault occasioning actual bodily harm, and 1 count of the possession of an offensive weapon. Now, that relates to that attack that took place on the LNER service from Doncaster to London King's Cross, which, of course, as you've been talking about, pulled in to enact an emergency stop at Huntingdon Station. However, another charge that we were unaware of relates to another incident on that same day at Pontoon, Docklands Light Railway, DLR service, in London. He's been charged in connection with that incident, 1 count of attempted murder and possession of a bladed weapon, and he is going to appear at Peterborough Magistrates Court today. Tracy Easton, who's the Chief Crown Prosecutor for CPS Direct, has just put out a statement in which she says our team of out-of-hours prosecutors work to establish that there is sufficient evidence to bring the case to trial, and it's in the public interest to pursue criminal proceedings. We worked closely with British Transport Police, she says, to review a huge volume of evidence, including CCTV. The number of charges will be kept under review as this continues to progress. We know the devastating impact, she says, that the events on Saturday's train has had and how the incident shocked the entire country. Our thoughts remain with all those affected. That they're coming from the Chief Prosecutor for CPS Direct, just outlining that decision to make these charges, but a significant development, as I say, naming their suspect now, a defendant in this case, Anthony Williams, 32 years old, and he is charged with those 10 counts of attempted murder in relation to the incident on the train, 1 count of assault occasioning actual bodily harm, and also a possession of weapon charge. And then separate to that, the other incident that happened on the DLR service at Pontoon Station in London on that same day, and a charge of attempted murder and possessing a weapon.
Mark, there's been some comment as well on because the police challenged another man on Saturday. We think he was tasered, and some people have criticised the police response. I think the police were doing their job, weren't they? If they apparently said to the man to stop running, he didn't stop running. If some other people on the train pointed out, said it's him, they had no choice, did they, but to intervene to get him down?
Yeah, listen, a couple of things to say about that. In the first instance, I think you're absolutely right. Of course, police running forward to a chaotic and violent scene do not know who the suspects are and who the victims are. It's clear. So when someone is pointed out to them or they have a vague description, they absolutely part and parcel of that. You would expect them to detain people that potentially could be suspects. I think where I have a difficulty with this one is it took almost a full day for the police to establish that this man, this 35-year-old man from London of Caribbean descent, was completely innocent. He had nothing to do with this. He was just a passenger like everyone else on that train. And of course, that was a day in which people then believed that an incident had involved 2 suspects, and all kinds of rumours were abound on social media about what was at play here. So I'm not. Of course, it's a confused situation. Of course, they have to speak to eyewitnesses, but there's CCTV as well. It seems just to me, and I'm sure that this man would have felt quite aggrieved by this, the fact that he was held for a full day before the police cleared him of any wrongdoing whatsoever.
Mark, very briefly, there has been some discussion overnight about whether or not there could be increased security at train stations, perhaps metal detectors to look for knives. Do you think that's practical or possible?
I don't think it's practical at all. I can absolutely understand the sentiment behind wanting to make the rail network safer. But if you just imagine for a second what the rail network is. It's a network built up of hundreds, many hundreds of rail stations right across the country. It's not like the airports, and the airports are problematic enough when you have to go through the security checks, but those are key airports, major airports numbering no more than probably a couple of dozen right across the country. You're talking about many hundreds of rail stations, and then you're talking about rural railway stations as well, where they're sometimes unmanned. So what happens then? You have knife arches at those stations. The trouble with having a knife arch on its own, it's no good. You need the security personnel to staff a knife arch to make sure that if someone does pass through with a weapon, that they're searched, detained, the weapon taken off them. Are they really going to provide security for all the stations that are pretty quiet, that have very few, if any, actual rail staff, never mind security staff? And then to do it on board the train, I just think is not practical as well. You've got to put a whole cohort of security personnel on a train. at every door, because that's where people board a train, at every door. So I'm just not sure it's practical, to be honest.
That's probably right. Mark White, thank you so much for that. Now, still ahead.
Find out why the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, wants to overhaul the Modern Slavery Act to make illegal immigration deportations smoother.
Up next.
I feel very badly. I mean, it's a terrible thing that's happened to the family. That's been a tragic situation.
That's the President of the United States weighing in on the Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor affair, as we're now told the former prince might even lose his military medals from the Falklands War. Is that a step too far? It certainly is.
I think so too. But first, if you're in search of some holiday sun, here's the forecast for some of the top European destinations.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there, and very good morning to you. This is your GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. The weather isn't really providing the most pleasant of starts to the week. Quite dull and damp for many of us, courtesy of low pressure that is sat close by, resulting in a fairly unsettled theme. There is quite a lot of cloud on the scene first thing this morning, with outbreaks of rain. They could be persistent and heavy at times, particularly around some hills across western areas of the UK. It is also going to be
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Some schools are banning birthday cakes from the classroom.
Yeah, banning parents from sports. And now the great headline in the Telegraph: Labour puts the knife into nursery birthday cake. Apparently, new guidelines for the Department of Education are saying that you should not send your child into school with a cake when it's their birthday, because it's bad for them, it's going to make them fat, all the rest of this stuff. It's the nanny state once again on the march, isn't it?
Is this a new thing? Because I don't remember ever taking a birthday cake.
Oh, yeah, we
on my
did.
birthday.
We did too.
Took a birthday cake.
And I think some schools I've seen that have a fake birthday cake, which is not nearly as nice, with a fake cake with a candle on, so you sing happy birthday and blow out the candle. But you know, I love the way Jacob Rees-Mogg.
Yes.
European GB News presenter has waded into this row, saying, well, my children's nanny sends little cakes into school for all the children.
Absolutely.
He said
the nanny sends them in.
Only socialists
know what is acceptable and what isn't.
He says only socialists want to stop such innocent pleasures. And I think there's a real point about that. One school, actually, Broxburn Primary in Harrow, is saying, don't send your child in with a cake. Donate a book to the school library instead. I mean, that is just not a good substitute, is it?
Cakes?
No, my kids are 1 and 3, so they're not quite at that age yet. But
It'll happen.
It does it. But I mean, it should, because
But it doesn't have to be a big splodgy cake. It can just be something.
But even if it's a bit of a treat, there's no way the calories of school birthday cake are the calories making people fat.
No.
No.
So we should focus on the big issues rather than ruining this fun.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not a killjoy. I think kids should have a bit of fun. I just didn't know it was a thing.
Yeah,
it's all changed since my day.
I think maybe it's the teachers who don't like the sugar rush the kids get afterwards, and they can't keep control in the classroom.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. 11 minutes to 10. You're watching Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
So the former Duke of York, remember him? Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor will lose his honorary rank of Vice Admiral. It's being stripped from him 1 week after having the royal title of Prince removed over his extraordinary friendship with the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein.
Well, now Buckingham Palace have refused to rule out stripping him of his campaign medal from the Falklands conflict, where he flew helicopter missions. Now, we're asking, would that be a step too far?
Well, let's talk to former RAF officer Al Rush, who joins us now. Al, good morning to you. It reeks to me of vindictiveness, frankly. He flew his helicopter. I understand his job was to draw Argentine fighter planes away from the Royal Naval ships, and he performed with distinction and bravery. So why should he lose that medal?
You're right, he flew his helicopter as a picket to draw fire and to be advance notice and warning. As you say, he put in as much effort and time as anybody else on our corporate. So, no, he shouldn't lose it. It's just corporate. It's just cancel culture gone crazy, isn't it?
Are there any situations in which people are stripped of their medals that they've actually received for active service?
Yes, I think there are. But I think more importantly, we should be looking at the issue of pension forfeiture. Nobody wants to lose their medals because they're nice and bright and shiny and we all look back on them very fondly. But the thing that hurts anybody, especially in the public sector, is the prospect of losing their pension. And at the moment, you can have your pension forfeited if you are guilty of a crime which might be treasonous in the armed forces. And perhaps that should be expanded. Perhaps it should be expanded to the civil service, the police, MPs.
That's interesting.
That, I think, would be a far...
And in case of Andrew, do you think he's done anything that is treasonable? I mean, he's let the royal family down, he's behaved abominably, he's told a pack of lies, but is he a traitor?
As a former corporal, junior non-commissioned officer, we were always being berated for potentially bringing the military, the service, the RAF, into disrepute. Yeah. And many of us got charged for bringing the military into disrepute. What he has done, yeah, absolutely, he's brought the military into disrepute. If he is now Mr. Mountbatten-Windsor, then perhaps he could be treated accordingly. I am not apologising for him. I am not justifying or defending anything that he is alleged to have done. But I think we do need to see the facts. We need to have them properly investigated, and then we need to make a proper decision about that.
Do we not also need to take a step back here and think about what all this cancel culture really means and what precedent this might set? Because, of course, Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor is alleged to have done some terrible things, but he's also done some very heroic things in the Falklands War. He's a member of the royal family. And if we try to overturn the good that people do every time they're convicted or even alleged to be convicted of something bad, are we not in danger of cancelling everyone? No one lives a blameless life. No one is not guilty of anything ever. Isn't this just cancel culture gone mad?
I think back to Prince Charles when his phone conversation with Camilla Parker Bowles was flashed over the front page of The Sun and he wanted to be her tampon. And let's be honest about it, that's appalling. I'm not trying to equate the two of them together, but if we are going to have some form of justice, some form of code of conduct for the royals, perhaps we need to look at everything, not just in isolation with Andrew, but all of them.
But who cares what they say in private?
I don't. Absolutely, I don't. I want them to uphold the values and traditions that we believe they hold dear. And yeah, I'm sure they're going to get drunk in private. I mean, Andrew had a fight, we are led to believe, with Harry. Families do this sort of thing. Yeah. But it's the whiff of hypocrisy that I don't like, and I think lots of people don't like about it either.
Is it right, just finally, that they are taking off his honorary vice, what is his title? They're taking off him, his commander title, which was an honorary title.
Honorary Vice Admiral, wasn't he? Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that's right, they take that off him?
Prince Harry was Honorary Air Commodore of Royal Air Force Honington, which is my regimental depot. When he left 5 years ago, he lost that title. Yeah. If Harry can lose his title for that, and if Andrew is seen to be... It's not just justice, is it? It's got to be seen to be justice. Yeah. And if Andrew is exposed to justice, then I see no reason why he should retain those titles. The military stands for exemplary values, and Andrew probably hasn't upholded those values.
Al Rush,
All right,
thank
Al.
you so much.
Fascinating. Nice to talk to you, Al. Now, still ahead, Nigel Farage is going to set out Reform's UK's economic policy this morning, and he's going to row back on cutting taxes. This is Britain's Newsroom, Britain's favourite morning show on GB News.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello there, a very good morning to you. This is your GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. The weather isn't really providing the most pleasant of starts to the week, quite dull and damp for many of us, courtesy of low pressure that is sat close by, resulting in a fairly unsettled theme. There is quite a lot of cloud on the scene first thing this morning with outbreaks of rain. They could be persistent and heavy at times, particularly around some hills across western areas of the UK. It is also going to be a very windy day across the board, with gales around exposed coastal and hill areas. If you are a little bit further towards the east, there is the slightly greater chance of you seeing that cloud breaking up a touch more, so that might allow some sunshine to poke through in places, and generally will stay a little bit drier here as well. But even if you do have the rain and the cloud around today, you will notice just how mild it is out there. Temperatures peaking 14 to 16 degrees Celsius for most nations. That is notably above where we should be for this time at the start of November. The unsettled theme will continue though as we head into the evening. Further outbreaks of rain, generally setting themselves up in a slight northeast-southwest line with potential for some slightly drier interludes either side of that, but it's still going to be a very blustery night right across the board. Those strong southwesterly winds filtering in mild conditions, particularly underneath the cloud and rain, only dropping down to around 14 degrees Celsius overnight, maybe a touch fresher where we see some clearer skies across Northern Ireland and Scotland. There is a little bit of uncertainty on Tuesday in exactly where the rain bands will be placed at this time, but certainly at this point, southwest England, southern Wales could see a lot of rainfall during the day. That's spreading its way into parts of northern England later on. Again, it's the southeast England, northern Scotland and parts of Northern Ireland that could stay drier over the course of the day, but it's still going to be blustery for all of us, and temperatures again 14 to 16 degrees Celsius. This unsettled and mild theme is looking to continue right throughout the week, so do get used to it. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Thank you, Britain, for our more than 2 million YouTube subscribers and more than 2 billion views. That is Britain watching, sharing and making its voice heard louder than ever before.
Good morning, this is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. On the roads, the M8 eastbound is restricted between Junction 2 at Claylands and Junction 1 at Hermiston Gate due to a broken down vehicle. In Warwickshire, an overturned vehicle has closed all lanes on the M40 southbound between Junction 16 and Junction 15. The M4 westbound in Bracknell Forest is experiencing delays with 2 of 4 lanes closed after a collision. Further congestion affects the M6 southbound near Wigan between Junction 28 and Junction 27. And on the trains, Avanti West Coast reports major disruption between Carlisle and Preston. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
We could be delivering the perfect Christmas to you this year. There's £30,000 in tax-free cash to make 2026 the best year yet. A further £10,000 cash to spend on gifts for all the family. There's £1,000 to spend in your favourite supermarket. And a festively themed GB News goodie bag. And we'll get it all to you in time for the big day. For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB17 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 28th of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. It's 10 o'clock on Monday, the 3rd of November. We're live across the United Kingdom. You're watching and listening to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
32-year-old Anthony Williams from Peterborough has been charged with 10 counts of attempted murder following that knife attack on a train in Cambridgeshire on Saturday.
Well, Anthony Williams is also charged with 1 count of attempted murder after a passenger was stabbed on the Docklands Light Railway in London the evening before that train stabbing.
And some breaking news this morning as a major incident has been declared in Cumbria after a train came off the tracks. Transport Secretary Heidi Alexander spoke to GB News earlier.
What we need to do now is get people safely off that train so they can continue their journeys, get home. There will be a thorough investigation that's conducted by the Rail Accident Investigation Branch to understand exactly what has happened here and to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
We made an absolute commitment in relation to not raising tax on working people.
That was our Prime Minister last year, but now the Chancellor Rachel Reeves is set to tax workers earning over £46,000 per year. I mean, tax them more in the November 26 budget.
And Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor will be stripped of his naval title, Vice Admiral, and could lose his Falklands medals. Is that fair? Well, the US President Donald Trump spoke about the scandal overnight.
I feel very badly. I mean, it's a terrible thing that's happened to the family. That's been a tragic situation.
And this morning, Reform leader Nigel Farage will set out his party's plans to get a grip on the country's finances. Will the Chancellor be watching and listening?
And sticking with Nigel Farage, do you remember the Afghan migrant who threatens to kill the Reform leader? Well, he seems to be enjoying life behind bars, judging by this video.
So we know a bit about Nigel Farage's speech. Some of the plans were, if you remember, estates under £2 million would be exempt from inheritance tax. Anybody earning up to £20,000 would pay no tax at all. We understand that's all going to be junked. I think it's quite right, actually, because it was unaffordable.
It was something like a £90 billion tax cut, which, of course, would be very nice, but in current conditions would be completely unaffordable. They've acknowledged that and said they're going to cut spending first. And one of the things that they're going to look at today is public sector pensions, because, of course, we've got these huge liabilities stretching into the future of people who've paid into their pension and have yet to claim it, and now their payments are they're less than the money going out every month. So what they're going to do about that is the problem that no politician has dared to touch for decades.
And that's interesting. And I wonder if this is already the influence being felt of Danny Kruger, former colleague of yours, of course, who defected from the Conservative Party. Danny Kruger's got a big brain, and when I interviewed him for the Daily Mail, he said it was all about getting the policies right.
Yes. It'll be really interesting to see how this is received, because anything to do with pensions makes people very anxious and worried about the future. But we can't go on how we are. Someone's got to tackle it. It's also very technical. Will people get bored, or will people be interested in the detail of what he has to say?
Well, if you work in the public sector, you're going to be fascinated, that's for sure.
Well, some people have gotten ideas of how to sort this out without penalising future generations. So you basically pay new entrants, so new teachers, new nurses, a lot more. They get more salary, but less of a pension contribution. So it kind of works out in the end, but without the debt. Hopefully that's the idea anyway.
Well, as ever, we'd love to know what you think. Send your views, post your comments by visiting
gbnews.com/yoursay. But first, here's the news with Sam Francis.
Very good morning to you. Just after 10 o'clock, well, the top story this hour, a major incident has been declared after a train derailed near Shap in Cumbria. Officials, though, say remarkably there are no reported injuries. The 428 of Anti-West Coast service from Glasgow to London came off the tracks just after 6 o'clock this morning. Well, we can show you now the first pictures emerging of that derailment in a passenger update from Network Rail. Around 85 passengers and staff are believed to have been on board at the time of the derailment. They have since been evacuated and taken to a nearby hotel, some said to be in shock. Transport Secretary Heidi Alexander says emergency crews are working to get everyone off safely, while Avanti is warning the lines between Penrith and Oxenholme are blocked. The network is also urging all passengers not to travel north of Preston today, as disruption is expected for several more days. Transport Secretary Heidi Alexander spoke to us here on GB News earlier today.
What we need to do now is get people safely off that train so they can continue their journeys, get home. There will be a thorough investigation that's conducted by the Rail Accident Investigation Branch to understand exactly what has happened here and to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
Water companies have been ordered to take, in fact, let's take you to a slightly different story. A heroic railway worker is fighting for his life after trying to stop a knife attacker on board a packed London North Eastern service from Doncaster to London. British Transport Police say CCTV shows the staff members' actions were nothing short of heroic, saving multiple lives during Saturday night's attack when left 10 people in hospital. Witnesses say passengers hid in train toilets and in the buffet car as the man went on a stabbing spree shortly after leaving Peterborough. 2 men were arrested when the train stopped in Huntington. One man, a 32-year-old from Peterborough, remains in custody on suspicion of attempted murder. Police say the attack is not terror-related. LNER says its thoughts and prayers are with the colleague who remains in a life-threatening condition. Water companies have been ordered to take urgent action after harmful levels of forever chemicals were found in drinking water sources serving more than 7 million people, 6 million rather. 23 enforcement notices have been issued by the Drinking Water Inspectorate over contamination that poses potential danger to life. Forever chemicals are long-lasting pollutants used in products from frying pans to firefighting foam, with some linked to cancers and thyroid disease. Water UK says tap water, though, remains safe, but it is calling on a total ban of the chemicals. Environmental groups are warning the UK's limits are weaker than those in the US. Leading radiographers are warning today that unsafe high street baby scan clinics are putting mothers and babies at risk, with cases of healthy pregnancies wrongly diagnosed as miscarriages. Well, that comes as the Society of Radiographers says anyone can buy an ultrasound machine and call themselves a sonographer, even without medical training or regulation. They're calling for sonographer to become a protected job title after reports of women told their babies had died when their scans were misread. And Israel has confirmed the identities of 3 dead hostages whose bodies were handed over by Hamas, but to the Red Cross in Gaza. Forensic tests identified them as Colonel Asaf Hamami, Captain Omer Nutra and Staff Sergeant Oz Daniel, all Israeli soldiers killed in the early days of the war and taken to Gaza. The government says Hamas must uphold its commitments under the US-brokered ceasefire deal and return all remaining hostages, dead or alive. 8 bodies are still believed to be in Gaza, as hopes are fading for further progress in the peace talks amid ongoing violations of that fragile truce. Those are the headlines. I'll be back with you shortly. Next, though, it's back to Andrew and Miriam.
Tune into GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom. We're live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
Lots of texts and emails coming in, I think, Miriam.
Yes, lots about Prince Andrew, or the royal who was formerly known as Prince Andrew.
It's going to take a long time to get out of the habit of calling him Prince Andrew.
I don't know if we should bother. It's a lot easier to say Prince Andrew, isn't it? Well, Dave says the whole thing against Prince Andrew in capital letters has been vindictive. But Jackie says, I have absolutely zero sympathy for Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. However, there are many, many others that seem to be getting off scot-free. that is a really good point. Obviously, if he has done what he's alleged to have done, they are very serious offences, and the victims involved in the Epstein scandal, you just can't bear thinking about. But in this country, 850 men a month are arrested for child sexual abuse material.
And how many are convicted?
Exactly. Well, a lot of them. So obsessing about one person who has perhaps done something similar, of course, it's important. But what about all the others?
And actually, Virginia Giuffre, when she alleges he had sex with her in Britain, she was 17 years of age, which would not have made it illegal.
That's true.
Inappropriate. Really inappropriate, because he was 3 times her age, but not illegal.
I think people are just enjoying his misery, which is sad, in my opinion.
Yeah, but he is an entitled oaf.
I'm sure. I think it runs in the royal family, starting with Henry VIII.
That's the problem, and he doesn't go out of his way to win sympathy and win friends and influence, does he?
But look, very mixed views. Steve says stripping Andrew of his Falklands medals is a step too far.
Really
but
is.
Catherine says he earned them and should be allowed.
He did. And I can remember when he came back from the Falklands, he literally jumped off his ship and there was a lovely picture of him with a rose in his mouth, and he was dashing and handsome, and he was public hero #1.
Gosh, what
Everybody
a fall
loved
from
him.
grace.
What a fall from grace. Now, 32-year-old Anthony Williams from Peterborough has been charged with 10 counts of attempted murder, 1 count of actual bodily harm and 1 count of possession of bladed article after the attack on board that train in Huntingdon.
Well, GB News' Home and Security Editor Mark White joins us now. Now, Mark, we understand that he has also been charged with this attempted murder the evening before the incident on the train in Huntingdon. Do we know anything more about that? And why was he not apprehended after that initial incident?
Well, we don't know about that, and of course we need to be a bit careful now that the case is live and that he will be appearing in court this morning. Briefly, the facts of that case, as told to us by the police, are that in the early hours of the 1st of November, of Saturday morning, so Friday night into Saturday morning, on a DLR service, a pontoon DLR station in London, a passenger was stabbed, received knife injuries to their face. And at that point, we have no more information. Clearly, there was no arrest at that time. But then, of course, we know that subsequently this incident unfolded the following evening on that LNER service between Doncaster and London King's Cross station, with the train having to pull in and enact that emergency stop at Huntingdon railway station. So Anthony Williams has been charged in total with 11 counts of attempted murder. 10 relate to the stabbings on board that LNER service. He is also facing 1 count of assault occasioning actual bodily harm, again relating to the LNER train service. And 1 count of possessing a bladed article. And he also faces a count of possessing a bladed article in connection with that stabbing on the DLR service at Pontoon Station. So he's due to appear at Peterborough Magistrates Court. We've had a statement from the Crown Prosecution Service from Tracy Easton, who is the Chief Crown Prosecutor for CPS Direct. Now, she says, our team of out-of-hours prosecutors work to establish that there is sufficient evidence to bring the case to trial, and it's in the public interest to do so. She said that they had worked closely with British Transport Police to review a huge volume of evidence, including CCTV. The number of charges, she says, will be kept under review as this case progresses its way through the Magistrates Court and then, no doubt, up to the Crown Court.
All right, Mark, that's Mark White, our Home Security Editor. Now, on the trains again, a major incident has been declared in Cumbria after a train was effectively derailed when it came off the tracks.
Well, the Transport Secretary, Heidi Alexander, says there are no reports of anyone being hurt.
Vanity West Coast says all lines are blocked between Penrith and Oxenholme. Well, travel journalist and author of many books, including British Rail, Christian Warmine joins us now. Christian, a derailment is highly unusual. What do we know about this, and what impact will it have on our journeys for the next foreseeable next few days, at least?
Yes, well, clearly, if there's no injuries, and it looks from the photographs that I have managed to see, although there's very little out yet, that the train stayed upright. So it might, and we don't know at what speed it was going, so it might be a fairly minor incident, but it will have caused damage to the track. And the track would have been faulty. It probably might need some new rails and stuff. So I can imagine this is going to take a while to sort out, and it will block services between Glasgow and essentially Preston.
Now, in the Telegraph last night, there's a piece quoting the civilian disaster expert, Professor Lucy Easthope, saying that it's only a matter of time, and it's a case of when rather than if there's a major derailment, crash or similar because of the state of Britain's ageing railways. Do you think that's fair? Do you think we can expect to see more of these incidents?
No, I'd rather question. I don't know whether she's a rail expert, but certainly there is no question that the tracks are generally in good condition, that they're inspected, that the new technology which enables tracks to be checked. I mean, in the old days, you used to have people who had to walk along the track every week or so. And now, of course, you have these what's called yellow equipment, because they're all yellow, that basically run along the tracks overnight and check all the conditions. And you have to look at the record of the railways. I mean, I've been writing about railways for more than 30 years. And in the initial few years, there were quite a lot of accidents. In the late 90s, early 2000s, there was a spate of accidents. Since then, we've had virtually no serious accidents. We've had a couple of derailments. There was a bad derailment in Scotland, which killed 4 people. And there was an incident in Wales recently where one person was killed, although it's unclear whether they just had a heart attack at the time. So, these incidents are incredibly rare, whereas in the 20th century, there were rail accidents that killed people every year. And some really major ones, like the Clapham rail disaster, and other ones that where there were multiple deaths. So look, I think this is you have to be very careful about not panicking over this. The railways are essentially far safer than travelling by road, and will remain so.
And Christian, talking of safety, of course, a lot of people will be appalled and concerned by what happened in Huntingdon on Saturday. But travelling on a train also, it's highly unusual for an incident of that nature on our trains in this country.
Absolutely. Look, I think there could be more of a presence of both guards and police in the evenings and nighttime. And I think that's something that needs to be looked at. This new organisation, Great British Railways, should make that something of a priority. But for example, in London, we have the London Overground, where the rule is that the stations are staffed all the time. Now, I'm not sure that we can staff every station. There's 2,500 stations across the rail network, and some of them have very few trains. I'm not saying that you need them all staffed all the time, but I think there should be a predilection towards having people there, and having people there late into their evenings, where essentially a lot of the railway network becomes a free railway, where basically everybody can walk through the barriers because they're open all the time, and nobody stops them. So I think that's something that being looked at. But I would like to reassure your viewers, these are, as you've said very sensibly, this is a very rare event. Most people travel most of the time safely and feel safe, and that's an important part. I think there is work to be done to make people feel safe, but by and large, this is a fantastic rail network where you don't feel kind of at risk. I mean, I contrast this with Paris, for example, where there's an edginess on the trains in Paris itself at night, which there just isn't in say London.
Fascinating.
Christian Woolmar, thank you very much for joining us there.
I think we should keep saying it to people because we know, just looking at emails and texts and tweets coming in, that people are anxious about travelling, but it is a safe way to travel.
And if you think how fast these trains go, you know, well over 100 miles an hour, and how few incidents there are. I mean, they're not always on time, it's true, but fortunately these incidents are...
Far more collisions on the roads.
Yeah, absolutely. And delays, normally.
Yeah, quite.
Now, it's never too early to think about the festive season, and how would you like to have your Christmas on us this year? That's right.
40,000 in tax-free cash, so you can have the Christmas of your dreams. Miriam will even cook for you. That would be the Christmas of your dreams, because she's a wonderful cook, I must tell you. £1,000 to spend on a luxurious Christmas lunch and a Christmas-themed GB News goodie bag for under the tree.
Maybe your book's in there. Well, all the best news, and you'll get it all in time for the big day. So here are all the details you need to be a festive winner.
We're giving you the chance to win your entire Christmas this year paid for by us. First, we'll give you an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash so you can have a brilliant new year. Then we'll give you a further £10,000 cash to spend on all your Christmas presents, the decorations, even the tree. Christmas lunch, that's on us too, with £1,000 in shopping vouchers to spend at your favourite supermarket. Finally, a GB News Christmas goodie bag. And the best news? You'll get it all in time for the big day. For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB17 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 28th of November. The winner may be contacted live on GB News, week commencing the 8th of December. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Well, coming up next, Nigel Farage will drop tax cut plans to focus on slashing public spending instead.
Quite right too, spending's far too high. And later this morning we'll be going through that and more with political commentators Charlie Rowley and Andy Williams. There they are. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
It's about this project. What are you doing with it, and what are you hoping to achieve?
Hi, Stephen. Hi, Anne. Hope you're well.
Hi. Yes.
I'm partnering with Genesis Care, which is a private healthcare company, and basically following their research, which shared that the number one fear of people who get diagnosed with glioblastoma is that they lose their memories. Now, that's obviously affects me because Tom was my brother, and his 2 points in his life was raising awareness to treatments and the power of positivity. Tom's family were called the Positive Parkers, and we were an extension of the Positive Parkers. So Genesis Care have created this campaign called the Memory Bank, which is an art installation that basically you go to. It was in the Westgate Shopping Centre in Cambridge, and now it's in the Genesis Care Centre.
Just here in the UK, it's about 13,000 people are diagnosed with this sort of primary brain tumour, glioblastoma, as you were saying. Did Tom ever say that that was his greatest fear, was losing his memory?
He didn't really. Tom lived in the moment. He never made us feel like he was diagnosed. He was always positive. Even in his worst days, he'd come in with a smile on his face. And what comes to mind is he'd go into an interview like this and say wonderful things about life, like such spiritual, deep messages. And I'd turn to him and I'd say, Tom, that was just phenomenal. And he'll say, like, I've no idea what I just said.
GB News, the People's Channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Welcome back. 24 minutes past 10. You're watching and listening to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Hicks.
I was chuckling because Charlie Rowley there was doing his hair.
Give away his secrets.
We're looking at his reflection in his mobile phone. There's a mirror somewhere.
It's just there. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you.
Great.
Spend a bit of time. Let's talk to Andy Williams instead.
Good morning.
Yes, yeah. What are we talking about?
Tax. We pay too much of it. Everyone's sick of paying too much of it. Tax burden's higher than it's ever been. And I was thinking about the fact that if you compared to America, I speak to my colleagues in the States, and they can't believe A, how much tax we pay, and B, how little money we earn comparatively.
Yeah. Yes.
The salary differential is we've become actually kind of a poor country almost.
That's why we have to pay such a high proportion of our income as tax, because we don't earn enough money to fund the state, essentially.
Well, in the US, if you earn less than $100,000 a year, it's about 85 grand. You're considered to not earn very much money. Here, that's much higher than the average.
And the 40p tax rate kicks in at 50,000. And if the wretched Tories hadn't frozen the allowance from 2021, it would be more like 62,000.
Right.
And I'm afraid the Labour government is carried on freezing the allowances, and I suspect in the budget later this month she'll freeze them even longer.
Well, Charlie, they're considering moving it down to 46,000 as a threshold for higher rate, which is historically very, very low threshold.
Yeah, absolutely. I was about to say, hold on to your hats. If you think it's bad now, it's going to get even worse in the next couple of weeks under this budget.
How can a nurse be a high-income earner?
Well, exactly.
Because that's what's going to happen. Well, nurses, teachers.
Exactly. And, you're talking about HGV drivers. You're talking, there's an example in, I think it's the Daily Mail, talking about if you're a manager of a local Wagamama or any kind of restaurant as a senior manager, if you're earning 46k, which is going to be, it's touted, the definition of what is the definition of a working person.
Which is ridiculous.
Ridiculous. That is absolutely ridiculous. People up and down the country who get up and work all hours, who are earning 46k, they might be earning a bit more, they might be earning a bit less. They are working people.
And in families where you've got dependent children, you might have one parent earning 50,000, let's say, and the other parent earning nothing or very little and using the time to look after children, elderly parents. They'll be whacked on the higher rate of tax. And next door, you could have two people earning £35,000 paying the basic rate of tax. Utterly unfair.
I couldn't agree more. And I think one of the problems, actually, is that if you look at... And it is worth pointing out, obviously, we've ended up in this position because we had 14 years of the Tories putting taxes up and up and up. However, Labour are going to go further. And I think one of the big problems is that if you look at the Cabinet, basically none of these people have worked in the private sector ever. No. They've all worked for unions and for think tanks or been in politics all their life. And most of them just don't understand what running a business, starting a business is.
I'll push back on that a little bit. I think that's only fair, because I don't think 14 years, when people will understand COVID, that you have to raise a bit of tax for, you've got to spend a little bit more.
That was 10 years in.
Yeah, but, we had to... The Tories, when they came in under coalition, they had to introduce austerity on the back of the last Labour government.
When the Tories lost that election, they were punished for a number of things, not least we were the most taxed we'd ever been in this country since the Second World War.
I
can't blame all that on COVID.
No, I totally agree, which is why the Tories went into that election pledging to cut tax, and the OBR put out...
Nobody believed them.
And that wouldn't have been affordable, right? So
of course it would have been. What they didn't do...
spending cuts.
Well, what they didn't do was say that we're going to take away the winter fuel allowance of some of the most vulnerable people in our society. They didn't say that they were going to put up national insurance contributions, a commitment that the Labour government said they weren't going to do, then did in the very first budget. They didn't say, and haven't had the opportunity to say, out of that budget, we're only going to have a one-time spending spree, and then she's coming back this year to break another manifesto pledge to put up income tax. Income tax, Andrew.
But they're going to cut national insurance at the same time, apparently. No, they're going to raise, or are they going to raise national insurance so we get pensions?
And cut income tax, exactly. I think
everything under the sun.
Everything under the sun. Which has been terrible for investment. It's causing people to look at pulling money out of their pensions, etc., etc. I think this Labour government is blowing a historic opportunity to totally revolutionise the tax system. It's way too complicated. They should just start from ground zero and build it back up.
Get rid of national insurance.
Get rid of national insurance. Get rid of the triple lock. That's the first thing they should do. Council tax hasn't been rebased since I was born, in 1991.
These poor pensioners. These poor
triple lock. We're going to have lots of our
is...
viewers and listeners shouting at the television. Yeah. What did he just say? Get rid of the triple lock.
Well, the triple lock is totally unaffordable and absolutely has to go.
And the problem we have now is that working age people are far more likely than pension-age people to live in poverty. Now, of course, that doesn't mean there aren't pensioners living in poverty. Of course there are. But the tide has completely turned to 20 or 30 years ago, and there does need to be some sort of rebalancing in that.
Well, totally. And when you look at, the government that can't even get through what is peanuts in comparison, in terms of savings, 5 billion in comparison to what is actually needed. They couldn't even get that through in terms of welfare spending. What on earth are they going to do at this budget if they can't do that?
Well, if they don't cut public spending, Andy, the markets are going to take fright.
I couldn't agree more. They have to go back and try and cut public spending again. And the challenge, as always, with the Labour Party is that the left make life impossible for the government.
Yeah. They've got a majority of 175.
I know, and I think they should have just, honestly, that 5 billion, they would have...
steamrolled
were they going to lose the vote? Maybe, but they should have just... They're going to have to drive it through.
Have to. It's
unsustainable to have 6.5 million people on out-of-work benefits. It's completely unsustainable.
5,000 people are signing on to personal independent plans every day.
Yep, exactly.
Madness.
And who are these people that are going to be picking up that tab and that bill? That is working people, the grafters who are watching this programme and listening, who are probably driving now up and down the motorways, and these are the people that are the drivers and the backbone of our economy. They are the people that are going to be punished.
And what do you think, Charlie, about calls for the Chancellor to be sacked? Obviously, we've had the non-scandal about this estate agent business, but the Tories asking for her to be sacked over her job as Chancellor. But who would you replace her with, and why would they have any more success with the left wing of the party?
I'd replace her with Andrew Pearce. And I think that would be something that the whole country can get behind.
But I have to tell you, mathematics was not my strong point. But I don't think it was Rachel Reid.
It can't be that bad. It can't be as bad as this.
I know.
Look, I think you're right. I have got a bit of sympathy, but only a touch, because this is a woman, don't forget, that plagiarised a book, that lied on a CV,
she said.
that broke down in the Commons. OK, which I can be a little bit sympathetic to, but I don't think that was because of a personal thing. Now she's this oversight of this renting saga, renting out her house where she should have had a licence. But it's never the crime, in inverted commas in this case, but the cover-up. Yeah. She wrote to the Prime Minister to say there is nothing we didn't know about it.
I think
she blatantly did.
I think that was more cock-up than conspiracy, to be fair.
Hold on. If I say something wrong today and I get asked to apologise, I'd apologise. But if I'd been found out that I'd sort of concocted what I was going to say, knowingly that it was going to be wrong, and then write to you to say, I'm sorry, I didn't know.
She just didn't know because she's busy being Chancellor.
She didn't know. She did the email.
Right? She's not a poor woman. Why would she risk her career, all this scandal, all these front pages, over £900? It's obviously an oversight. What's she got to gain from doing this?
I don't know about you, but I didn't know that a licence was required to rent out any property.
It depends.
No, I know.
It's in selective areas.
I know, but I didn't know that was the case at all.
But that's the point.
And she probably didn't either.
You can be sympathetic for that oversight, but what you can't do, I don't think, is write to the Prime Minister to say, we did not know about this at all, when she clearly...
That was true.
And she had supported selective licences of this nature in her own constituency.
I know.
But apparently so many people didn't know about these. There's been a 25% surge in tenants now trying to get their rent back from their landlord because they found out that they've not ticked this box.
Because technically, we had Ted Hughes, who was the former Poet Laureate's daughter, writing in the Mail last week. She had to pay back thousands and thousands of pounds because she'd made the same inadvertent error.
It just shows how stupid these licences are.
Well, why did she support it in the first place? It's another form of tax, isn't it, really?
It's just socialism gone mad.
Yeah, I'm afraid it is. But she'll survive until he throws her under the bus when his poll ratings become so dire he needs something else.
But if he does do that, the moment he does that, he's finished. So I don't think that's...
It sets the clock ticking, doesn't it?
Does a bit.
I think so.
Oh, on that happy note.
Take the mirror with you, Charlie.
Thank you very much. I thought I was
thinking... the paper or the actual piece of glass? You definitely
was it okay? Was it...
Very nice. Get rid of the beard.
Well, you guys will be back in an hour. Thank you very much for your contribution. But you've now got your 60-second news update with Sam Francis.
Very good morning to you. 10:33, the top story this hour. In Cambridgeshire, a man has been charged with 11 counts of attempted murder after the knife attack on an LNER train on Saturday night. 32-year-old Anthony Williams also faces weapons and assault charges and a separate attempted murder charge linked to an incident in a London station earlier the same day. Transport Secretary Heidi Alexander has praised one rail worker as a hero, saying he saved lives by putting himself in harm's way. Meanwhile, a major incident has been declared in Cumbria after a train came off the tracks there. Transport Secretary Heidi Alexander says there are no reports of anyone hurt. Avanti West Coast says all lines are blocked between Penrith and Oxenholme. Passengers are being told not to travel north of Preston today. Around 6 million people could be affected by so-called forever chemicals found in drinking water. Several firms have been told to take urgent action, though regulators insist tap water is still safe to drink. Israel has confirmed the bodies of 3 soldiers have been returned by Hamas by the Red Cross. 8 hostages are still believed to be in Gaza as talks over the next stage of the ceasefire continue to stall. And in southeast Wales, a 9-month-old baby has died after a dog attack there. Police have seized the animal. No arrests, though, have been made so far. Those are your half-past headlines. I'll have a full roundup for you shortly.
Take the GB News family with you on any device. As long as you have an internet connection, tune into GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond.
It's 10:35 and you're watching and listening to Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Now, the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood is reportedly planning to overhaul the referral scheme that is increasingly used to delay removal flights in an attempt to crack down on illegal migration.
Well, that's all coming up. Don't go away because we've got a break.
Hello there, a very good morning to you. This is your GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. The weather isn't really providing the most pleasant of starts to the week, quite dull and damp for many of us, courtesy of low pressure that has sat close by, resulting in a fairly unsettled theme. There is quite a lot of cloud on the scene first thing this morning with outbreaks of rain. They could be persistent and heavy at times, particularly around some hills across western areas of the UK. It is also going to be a very windy day across the board with gales around exposed coastal and hill areas. If you are a little bit further towards the east, there is the slightly greater chance of you seeing that cloud breaking up a touch more, so that might allow some sunshine to poke through in places, and generally will stay a little bit drier here as well. But even if you do have the rain and the cloud around today, you will notice just how mild it is out there. Temperatures peaking 14 to 16 degrees Celsius for most nations. That is notably above where we should be for this time at the start of November. The unsettled theme will continue though as we head into the evening. Further outbreaks of rain, generally setting themselves up in a slight northeast-southwest line with potential for some slightly drier interludes either side of that, but it's still going to be a very blustery night right across the board. Those strong southwesterly winds filtering in mild conditions, particularly underneath the cloud and rain, only dropping down to around 14 degrees Celsius overnight, maybe a touch fresher where we see some clearer skies across Northern Ireland and Scotland. There is a little bit of uncertainty on Tuesday in exactly where the rain bands will be placed at this time, but certainly at this point, southwest England, southern Wales could see a lot of rainfall during the day. That's spreading its way into parts of northern England later on. Again, it's the southeast England, northern Scotland and parts of Northern Ireland that could stay drier over the course of the day, but it's still going to be blustery for all of us, and temperatures again 14 to 16 degrees Celsius. This unsettled and mild theme is looking to continue right throughout the week, so do get used to it. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Britain, for sharing over 5 million comments on your say, because when you talk, we listen.
Good morning, this is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. On the roads, expect M8 eastbound delays due to a broken down vehicle between junctions 2 and 1. M6 southbound between junctions 28 and 27 in Wigan is delayed, with normal flow expected late morning. The M1 southbound entry slip at junction 21 in Leicestershire is closed due to a collision. Warwickshire's M40 southbound between junctions 16 and 15 has 2 lanes blocked after an accident. And on the trains, expect major disruption with Avanti West Coast between Carlisle and Preston, and on Great Northern services between London King's Cross and Peterborough. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
(22:11). You're watching and listening to Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
The Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood, we hear a lot of her, don't we, these days, is reportedly planning to overhaul the referral scheme that's increasingly being used, hijacked in my view, to delay removal flights in an attempt to crack down on illegal immigration.
Well, David Hay, the human rights lawyer, joins us now. Good morning, David. Thank you for joining us in the programme. Now, this Modern Slavery Act was introduced by the Conservatives some years ago.
Boo.
Andrew's not biased. In order to help people who were caught in modern slavery in the UK. But it is being misused now by asylum seekers. Can you tell us how that is?
Hi, good morning to you both. I mean, you're absolutely right. It was introduced by the Conservative Party, and for very good reasons. There are, modern slavery is a serious issue around the world. Even in countries like the UK, where you perhaps wouldn't imagine, most people wouldn't imagine there is modern slavery. It does exist, but I think, like you said, it is being abused. Like so many laws that were there to protect the very vulnerable and those whose lives are at risk, they're being abused by those who aren't vulnerable and whose lives aren't at risk. It's similar to the asylum. So it's very. So if I go through the process to kind of help you understand. So let's say if someone came across the channel illegally, and they get arrested when they land, and they then claim asylum. What I think the Home Secretary would like, she would like at that point, if they are a victim of modern slavery, that they at that point declare that they are a victim of modern slavery. What's happening is that people are not doing that. They're going through the asylum process. They're going through, perhaps if they get rejected, the appeal process. And at some point down the line, they are being reported as someone suffering from modern slavery. And what that can do is delay the whole process. I think we saw it back in September with an Eritrean man. It didn't delay the process that much because the courts were quick and they said that, no, you're not a victim of modern slavery. So that they've already made a few changes, but that's essentially what the problem is. It can delay the whole deportation process. And I think that's what Shabana Mahmood is now saying that she wants to change.
What does it mean, David, forgive me, spell out in layman's terms, modern slavery? If they say, no, I'm a victim of modern slavery. I mean, you think of slaves, you think of the Romans having slaves and the Egyptian pharaohs having slaves. What is modern slavery, please tell?
I mean, I'll give you a good example of something that I've seen and that I was involved in. So, and as an example, let's say the Gulf rulers that have large residences here, they bring in their staff, which are often from the Middle East, but their staff are from countries like the Philippines, like from India. They bring them in, they don't have their passports, they're not paying them properly, they're not going through the normal rules and regulations of employment law here, and they're effectively abused. They are effectively modern slaves. That's one example. That's something that happens.
But why did we need a slavery law to root that out? Surely there were other laws on the statute, but why do we need another cumbersome piece of legislation?
I think that's a good point. I mean, the reality is that the laws were not, even now, though, that's the problem. The problem that I mentioned with these Gulf rulers, the modern slavery law isn't protecting those individuals. It's also similar to, for instance, where people are sexually exploited, where they're brought in from other countries and sexually exploited here. Passports are removed from them. They're in fear for their life. But like you said, there were other laws that did actually potentially stop that from happening, but that weren't used. So this new law was brought in, and like with so many other laws, I don't think it's been as effective as it could be, because it's been more abused by those that don't need it. Because I help several people, particularly in those, like I said, I mentioned with these Gulf rulers that bring people in. It's not helping them, this particular law. So it does need reform in any event, I think, because it doesn't help, in my experience, the genuine victims of modern slavery in this country, and it's open to abuse by those that it isn't there to protect.
But by the Home Secretary saying what she's saying, aren't they just going to say, the people smugglers are going to say you're victims of modern slavery the moment you arrive, even if they're not, if you see what I mean?
Well, absolutely. I think that's what people were going to do. I mean, as you already know, people basically almost get given a crib sheet when they come across these are the things you need to say. Number 10 will now add, make sure you say, you're a victim of modern slavery. Now, self-reporting with modern slavery, bit of a legal boring point. You can't technically do that. It has to be what's called a first responder, which is someone like the Home Office or a migration charity, the police. So you can't kind of self-report, like self-identify, if you like, as a modern slavery victim. Someone else has to do that. But if you obviously tell the police and the police start the investigation, so you can start that process as soon as they come in. And one of the changes that they have made, Shabana Mahmood recently, following the September comments she made about people abusing this, was that the right to appeal, the reconsideration if you're rejected, now can be done once the person is outside of the country. So they've made a tiny change there already. But I don't see that, this has been a problem that people have known about for a very long time. I don't see, like you said, Andrew, I don't see the changes that she makes. It will literally become number 10 on the sheet of what to say for these fake asylum seekers. They will add it and they will delay it. What they need to do is speed up the whole process. So if someone does come across, the process is sped up very, very quickly. The other problem you have with modern slavery as well is it's very difficult to prove whether you are or are not a victim, particularly if you're not a victim and you just raise that. How is the Home Office effectively going to disprove that you are not?
Fascinating.
Indeed. Well, David Hay, thank you so much for joining us this morning. And
he explains it so well, doesn't he?
Absolutely, really good. But it is just a case of too much law.
Too much
law. It's already illegal to abuse people and exploit them.
Yes, of course it is. I just don't know why we needed to do it.
And it has made the asylum system completely untenable.
I'm afraid it has.
Well, let's hope Shabana Mahmood's reforms do work, but we won't hold our breath. Well, still ahead, Nigel Farage will set out his economic vision for Britain this morning.
Up next, though, why on earth has Britain's national debt grown at a faster rate than that of any advanced economy? I tell you why, because they keep spending our money, which we haven't got.
Well, use some of that money to go on holiday. Here's the forecast for the European destinations.
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Hello there, and very good morning to you. This is your GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. The weather isn't really providing the most pleasant of starts to the week. Quite dull and damp for many of us, courtesy of low pressure that is sat close by, resulting in a fairly unsettled theme. There is quite a lot of cloud on the scene first thing this morning with outbreaks of rain. They could be persistent and heavy at times, particularly around some hills across western areas of the UK. It is also going to be a...
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Bold. They are under no illusion.
Ray.
Are you a human trafficker? Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it. Don't get this on the BBC. Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines. The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it? From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos. What I'm going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak. Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it?
no,
Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes and Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 11 minutes to 11. You're watching and listening to Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
So the UK's national debt is now growing at the fastest rate of any other rich country. Only the United States and Spain have seen similar rises. This is following analysis by Oxford Economics, which shows debt has close to tripled from 2005 to 2025.
The independent economist Julian Jessup joins us now. Julian, these figures are extraordinary. I think people will be aware that governments have had to borrow for COVID in recent years and incidences like that. But why has the UK's debt grown so much faster than other comparable nations?
Well, to be fair, I don't actually think it has. There isn't a huge difference between the UK and many other countries on that chart. And it's also very dependent on which time period you choose. I reran the numbers myself last night, being a sort of sad data nerd. If you choose slightly different periods, actually it's Italy or France or even the United States that's on top. So I think this is a general problem amongst developed economies. That said, it's clear that it's a very big problem in the UK too. And I think there are a number of explanations for that, but it all basically comes down to the state becoming too big and not being very good at what it is doing. So productivity numbers in particular in the public sector have been very poor. We had some more bad news out on that this morning. So that means the government is having to spend more, borrow more, tax more just to stay still, which is the reason why our debt numbers are so bad.
You say the state's growing too big. How do you explain what you mean by that, Julian?
Well, there are a number of different ways of looking at that. One is simply the amount of government, the amount of national income that the government is spending. And actually, some countries are in a worse position than us. So France, for example, the government spends more than 50% of national income, but we seem to be on course for those sorts of numbers now. So one part of it is the sheer amount of money that is being spent. The second thing, though, is the quality of that spending. In particular, we spend an enormous amount of money on things like the NHS that are not very efficient, that don't deliver good services to patients. And then finally, there's a bigger state in the form of more intervention. So there seems to be an idea now that any problem, the solution is more government. The government needs to regulate or to cap prices or whatever. And that's holding back the private sector as well.
You wouldn't mind if the spending achieved positive outcomes, but I talk to most people in Britain and they say nothing works. Broken Britain.
Well, I think that's the problem. I'd split public spending into two parts. There are some things basically that the government has to do. So there are things like the criminal justice system and national defence. I think, if anything, we've been underspending in those areas. So things like the court system have seen some of the biggest cuts in spending over the last decade or so. So the things that we should be doing, we're not doing very well. The things we don't have to do, we're doing too much of. So there's really no reason for the state to be essentially a monopoly provider of healthcare services to most people in this country. We need more competition, more private sector involvement in healthcare provision, both in terms of funding and provision, and lots of other areas as well where I simply don't see why the government has a role. Overseas aid is a good example of that. I mean, people want to be charitable and give money to good causes overseas, then that's fine. But why does that have to be directed by big budget coming out of Whitehall?
Well, one thing that could disincentivise private sector productivity even more was if Rachel Reeves were to reduce the threshold for the higher rate tax down from £50,000 to £46,000, putting everybody who earns over more than that amount at 40% tax rate a year. What do you think the impact of that would be on the economy?
Well, first of all, again, trying to be optimistic, I wouldn't necessarily take big increases in income tax for granted in the budget. There's still a lot of moving parts in the Office of Budget Responsibility's forecasts, and she might be able to get away with a package of, £20 billion or less, which she could probably raise from, capital taxes on richer people, and a few other, bells and whistles as well. But it does look increasingly likely that she is going to have to raise income tax. The hints coming out of the Treasury are that won't be on people earning less than £46,000 a year, which apparently is now the definition for being a working person or not. But of course, an enormous number of people do earn more than £46,000 a year, and then will be hit by higher taxes. And even if it doesn't, affect their incentives to work, that's clearly going to make them worse off and reduce the amount they can spend on goods and services.
Julian, I'm so sorry, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much. Don't go anywhere, because Nigel Farage is going to set out reforms to economic policies.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello there, and very good morning to you. This is your GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. The weather isn't really providing the most pleasant of starts to the week, quite dull and damp for many of us, courtesy of low pressure that is sat close by, resulting in a fairly unsettled theme. There is quite a lot of cloud on the scene first thing this morning, with outbreaks of rain. They could be persistent and heavy at times, particularly around some hills across western areas of the UK. It is also going to be a very windy day across the board, with gales around exposed coastal and hill areas. If you are a little bit further towards the east, there is the slightly greater chance of you seeing that cloud breaking up a touch more, so that might allow some sunshine to poke through in places, and generally will stay a little bit drier here as well. But even if you do have the rain and the cloud around today, you will notice just how mild it is out there. Temperatures peaking 14 to 16 degrees Celsius for most nations. That is notably above where we should be for this time at the start of November. The unsettled theme will continue, though, as we head into the evening. Further outbreaks of rain, generally setting themselves up in a slight northeast-southwest line, with potential for some slightly drier interludes either side of that. But it's still going to be a very blustery night right across the board. Those strong southwesterly winds filtering in mild conditions, particularly underneath the cloud and rain, only dropping down to around 14 degrees Celsius overnight. Maybe a touch fresher where we see some clearer skies across Northern Ireland and Scotland. There is a little bit of uncertainty on Tuesday in exactly where the rain bands will be placed at this time, but certainly at this point, southwest England, southern Wales could see a lot of rainfall during the day. That's spreading its way into parts of northern England later on. Again, it's the southeast England, northern Scotland and parts of Northern Ireland that could stay drier over the course of the day, but it's still going to be blustery for all of us, and temperatures again 14 to 16 degrees Celsius. This unsettled and mild theme is looking to continue right throughout the week, so do get used to it. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
We're giving you the chance to win your entire Christmas this year paid for by us. First, we'll give you an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash. Then we'll give you a further £10,000 cash to spend on all your Christmas presents, even the tree. Christmas lunch, that's on us too, with £1,000 in shopping vouchers to spend at your favourite supermarket. Finally, a GB News Christmas goodie bag. For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB17 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 28th of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
It's 11 o'clock on Monday, the 3rd of November, live across the UK, Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
Well, any moment now, Reform UK leader Nigel Farage will set out his economic vision for Britain. Don't miss it.
And a major incident has been declared in Cumbria after a train came off the tracks. The Transport Secretary, Heidi Alexander, spoke to GB News earlier.
What we need to do now is get people safely off that train so they can continue their journeys, get home. There will be a thorough investigation that's conducted by the Rail Accident Investigation Branch to understand exactly what has happened here and to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
32-year-old Anthony Williams from Peterborough has been charged with 10 counts of attempted murder following a knife attack on a train in Cambridgeshire on Saturday.
We made an absolute commitment in relation to not raising tax on working people.
That was Sir Keir Starmer last year, but now the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, will only set to tax workers more if they're earning more than £46,000 a year in the next budget.
And Andrew Mountbatten Windsor will be stripped of his naval title, Vice Admiral, and could lose his Falklands Medal. Is that fair? Well, US President Donald Trump spoke about the scandal overnight.
I feel very badly. I mean, it's a terrible thing that's happened to the family. That's been a tragic situation.
This run-up to the budget has been the longest on record.
Why did she do it so late again?
And we were talking with our panel earlier about how it's allowed the government to float all these different possibilities about taxing and spending, which has basically caused the housing market to shut down. No one wants to buy or sell because of what might happen, and now people are fearing about the amount of tax they might have to pay.
Yeah, because if they are going to take this tax threshold down when you start paying a 40p rate from 50,000 to 46,000, it's going to get a lot of people in their tax bracket. People like nurses. Why are they going to pay more?
And we already see people not take promotions and things like that around the 50,000 mark because it's just not worth it once you have to start paying more tax. Sometimes you lose other kind of benefits as well, like child benefit and things like that. It's going to be very difficult for people, but we'll see. I mean, we may not have more income tax. They may stick to wealth taxes, so-called wealth taxes. Long time to wait this.
I know.
Still.
As ever, we know what you think. Send your views, post your comments by visiting
gbnews.com/yoursay. But first, here's the news with Sam Francis.
Very good morning to you from the newsroom at just after 11 o'clock. Well, the top story this hour, a man accused of stabbing spree on a high-speed train in Cambridgeshire is also alleged to have carried out a knife attack at a station in London earlier the same day. 32-year-old Anthony Williams will appear before Peterborough Magistrates Court charged with 11 counts of attempted murder, 1 count of assault and actual bodily harm, and 2 counts of possession of a bladed article. One of the victims, a member of LNER staff, remains in a critical but stable condition after the attack on Saturday's Doncaster to London train, which left several others injured. British Transport Police say they're also investigating possible linked offences, while prosecutors warn against speculation that could prejudice the ongoing case. Meanwhile, a major incident's been declared after another train derailed near Shap in Cumbria, but officials say remarkably there were no reported injuries. The 4:28 Avanti West Coast service from Glasgow to London came off the tracks just after 6 o'clock this morning. Around 85 passengers and train staff were on board and have since been safely evacuated and taken to a nearby hotel. Transport Secretary Heidi Alexander says emergency crews are now working to get everyone off safely, while Avanti is warning all links between Penrith and Oxenholme are blocked. The network is urging passengers not to travel north of Preston today, as disruption is expected to continue. Well, here's what the Transport Secretary had to say to us earlier here on GB News.
What we need to do now is get people safely off that train so they can continue their journeys, get home. There will be a thorough investigation that's conducted by the Rail Accident Investigation Branch to understand exactly what has happened here and to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
In other news, water companies have been ordered to take urgent action after harmful levels of so-called forever chemicals were found in drinking water sources, serving more than 6 million people across the country. 23 enforcement notices have been issued by the Drinking Water Inspectorate over contamination that could pose a potential danger to human health. Forever chemicals are long-lasting pollutants used to in products from frying pans to firefighting foam, with some linked to cancer and thyroid disease. Water UK says tap water remains safe, but is calling for a total ban on the chemicals, as environmental groups warn the UK's limits are weaker than those in the US. Israel has confirmed the identities of 3 dead hostages whose bodies were handed over by Hamas to the Red Cross in Gaza. Forensic tests identified them as Colonel Asaf Hamami, Captain Omer Nutra and Staff Sergeant Oz Daniel, all Israeli soldiers who were killed in the early days of the war and taken to Gaza. The government says Hamas must uphold its commitments under the US brokered ceasefire deal and return all remaining hostages, dead or alive. 8 bodies are still believed to be in Gaza as hopes are fading of further progress in the peace talks amid ongoing violations of fragile truce. A 9-month-old baby has been killed in a dog attack at a home in southeast Wales. Emergency services were called to a property near Caldicot on Sunday evening, but the child couldn't be saved. Gwent police say the dog has been seized, but no arrests have been made so far as their investigations continue into the breed and the circumstances of the attack. Neighbours say the community is in shock, describing the tragedy as heartbreaking. Those are the latest headlines for now. Do stay with us for that press conference coming up shortly from London with Nigel Farage. Now, though, it's over to Britain's newsroom.
Take the GB News family with you on any device. As long as you have an internet connection, tune into GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond.
Well, any moment now, Nigel Farage is going to make a major speech on the economy. They talked a lot about migration, but this is all to be about the economy, and we think he's going to junk quite a lot of previous commitments because he says what we think he's going to talk about how they've got to get public spending under control because public spending is out of control.
And we understand that one of the areas they're going to be looking at is public sector pensions. And economists have warned that they're spiralling out of control. I think the calculation is that we will owe $6 trillion in unfunded public sector pensions over the next 80 years. Because, of course, what happens is teachers, nurses, they pay a portion of their salary as pension contributions, but instead of being saved up in a pot for their own retirement, they are used to fund the retirements of people who are currently retired. And that worked when there were enough people still working, but now retirements are so much longer. Essentially, we're very soon going to be at the point where we're paying out way more than the contributions that come in, and that is just completely unfunded. There's no money saved up anywhere to do it.
And no political party, well, not Labour or the Tories, have embraced this because they know it's unpopular, it's also dense, it's technical, but Farage is going to take it head on.
Which I think is very interesting, because this is another topic that nobody's been willing to touch. And it's all very well calling Nigel Farage a populist, but he's tackling some quite unpopular topics. Be interesting to see how it goes down.
We've got the panel back with us. Andy Williams, somebody's got to talk about public sector pensions.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think it's increasingly difficult to make the case that if you're in the public sector and you're getting 26% pension, that's fair when people in the public sector typically get 5 or 6. Sorry, in the private sector, yeah. You know, why should we be paying people 4 times greater pensions than people in the private sector? So, and it's, as you said, Miriam, it's a bill that's spiralling out of control, so I do think it's right to address it.
And Charlie, in the private sector, you pay in a certain amount of money, you hope that it will be enough in retirement, but it's certainly not proofed against inflation. You've got to hope that inflation stays low. Whereas the public sector pensions, if inflation does spike, well, the taxpayer will foot the bill for that.
Well, exactly. And, you know, the huge discrepancy between the public sector and the private sector is about productivity and results. And in the public sector, it seems, particularly in Whitehall, when you're sort of paid off with these golden pensions, these golden handshakes that so many civil servants have, when actually it is the public sector and public services that are crumbling. Now, that is not the people that necessarily on the front lines. They do a heroic job every day, whether it's our doctors and nurses, our police, and emergency services and all the rest of it. But the people sitting in Whitehall, an ever bloated number of people that are sitting in Whitehall on these massive salaries and massive pay pensions in the public sector that isn't delivering for the public, I think absolutely does need to be looked at.
You worked with government ministers for many years under the last Tory administration. Why did the Tories not get to grips with it? No votes in it?
No, I think there would have been. I just think, look, you know, what the last government had to deal with was so much in terms of dealing with Brexit, because there was obviously political division within the Conservative Party, then dealing with COVID. It took its eye off the ball on a number of issues, you know, including migration, you know, something that obviously I think people care about a lot in this country. They care about the economy. But so things that the Tories should have done, that they had the ambition to do, they just didn't get round to doing.
Andy, one problem is that if you do reform the public sector pensions, at some point you're going to have to say to new entrants, so people starting their career, you can't have what all these other people in the same profession have got. And to do that, you've probably got to compensate them with considerably higher salaries. So it's initially more cost to the taxpayer.
I don't think we can afford. We can't do that, and that would negate the benefit of making those changes anyway. So I think there's just going to have to be a very honest conversation with the public and with people who want to go into those jobs and just say, you know, I'm afraid life's not fair, you know.
But how would that affect recruitment, for example, in professions that are already struggling, like teaching?
It's a real challenge.
Well, of course, then you've got the unions who would never accept that under this government anyway. I mean, we were told that, you know, train drivers and doctors will get a huge one-off pay increase to prevent strikes. Well, we've seen more strikes than ever.
Yeah, one-off.
Nothing's one-off.
No, it's not. I mean, I'd be in favour of, if you take the civil service, which, as you say, has bloated over the last few years, I'd be in favour of dramatically cutting it back and paying people who remain more, right? And keep the best people and make it a more attractive place for the brightest and the best to work. And at the moment, that's just not the case.
And I think, you know, without preempting what Nigel is going to say, you know, we assume, we're led to believe he's going to talk about cutting public spending before any kind of increasing public spending, which I think that a lot of the public will get behind. But I think he's having a reset moment here. I think, you know, he is taking a bit of a mantle here to say, look, the two previous parties, the Tories, that obviously failed to get to grips with the ever increase in public spending, and Labour, that are just spending and putting up your taxes, and we're not seeing the growth, we're not seeing the economic productivity. He's saying, right, actually, I'm not going to do what previous parties have done in the past and failed the British public. I'm going to be really honest and say we are going to cut public spending. We're going to ditch all of the money that's wasted on things like the migrant hotels and stopping all the boats and all the rest of it before we can cut taxes, and one will happen before the other. And I think there's a bit of a trust question now, and that's what he's looking to win over the public, to say, look, I could really be trusted with the economy.
I made a calculation, how many of these public sector workers would be affected, vote reform?
Probably not very many, I would have thought.
That's a
no, I mean, I think that's a fair assumption. They're probably more likely to vote Labour.
Yeah.
I think it's smart of Nigel Farage to get ahead of this, actually, and make this speech now rather than be forced to in 18 months or 2 years' time. Because the reality is the pledges that have been laid out that it looks like he's going to junk, they're not affordable.
We're going to go to him now. Here's Nigel Farage coming onto the stage. It's all backlit blue.
No smoke or fireworks.
Yeah. But it's a pretty dramatic entrance, more so than most political leaders.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Introduced by Zia Yusuf.
Zia, thank you, and good morning, everybody. Another depressing budget hoves into view, another tax-raising budget, another budget that doesn't have the courage, the guts to cut public spending, and I think the level of pessimism amongst businesses, amongst savers, amongst those that have assets of any kind has not been lower in modern times. I think for some years we've actually been living under an illusion. We've not been prepared to face up to just how much of an economic mess we're genuinely in. As we slip down the global league tables, we kid ourselves. Well, it's okay. We've got GDP growth. But there wouldn't have been any GDP growth over the course of the last few years if it wasn't for mass migration on a scale hitherto never even contemplated, and of course excess government borrowing. That is all that has kept GDP figures up. And indeed, I think we can argue very strongly that on an individual basis, mass migration has made the average Briton poorer. You take a year like 2024, a record level of people coming into the country, and GDP per capita falling. And of course, the productivity problem, well, there's nothing new there. We've been suffering from poor productivity going back for the best part of 20 years. We convinced ourselves that by importing masses of cheap, unskilled foreign labour, that somehow that would be good for our economy. Well, it was good for the wage bills of big companies in the short term, but catastrophic when it came to training and education for our own workforce. And when it comes to the public sector, who still seem to be hooked on the idea that working from home somehow is good for productivity, well, we see the disastrous results, and this is something that Danny Kruger, on our behalf, has started work on already. But the one subject we really don't discuss, at least the Conservative and Labour parties don't discuss, is the level of national debt. In fact, even last week, the leader of the Conservative Party was saying, in office, we cut the deficit for 14 years. Well, cutting the deficit is a very different thing to cutting debt when you're still running borrowing certainly at peacetime levels, unlike anything ever seen before. They may try to wash their hands and run away from it, but our national debt increased by over 2.5 times during those 14 years. And now it's accelerating. Now it's accelerating in the most extraordinary way. The OBR predictions for the year going back just before the general election was that we'd borrow 77 billion in the year. That estimate is now 130 billion and rising with each and every month. Our debt has risen faster than any other comparable Western country. In fact, in the last 20 years, our debt-GDP ratio is up by nearly 60%. We are doing worse on debt than any of our competitors, and that includes Eurozone countries who are in other deep, deep trouble. Our debt repayments are over 100 billion a year. They're over the level of our defence budget, and the markets are getting nervy. We've seen this with 10 and 30-year gilt yields. In fact, I think my own view is that in 2 budgets' time, the markets will actually force the Chancellor into what will be a genuine austerity budget, at which point the left in the Labour Party won't buy it, and it's why I still stand by my prediction that there will be a general election caused by economic collapse that will happen in 2027. And just look at the pace, the rapid pace that we continue to deindustrialize. It's all going. Chemicals, refining, cement, heavy engineering, steel. We're losing literally all of it. Cars, and China, the beneficiary in almost every single sector. Why? Because for ideological reasons, we have chosen to have the most expensive industrial energy prices in the world. As for benefits, well, the bill this year has ballooned to over $300 billion. That is more than the cost of the National Health Service and defence added up together. So things aren't happening, and work isn't even paying. Our million lowest paid workers would all be better off if they claimed to have mild anxiety. That is the level of mess we're in. One of my own great frustrations is that Brexit has been squandered. The opportunity to sensibly deregulate, the opportunity to become competitive globally, all of that has been squandered. And the worst thing is that regulations and the way regulators behave with British business is now worse than it was at the time of the Brexit referendum vote, and I apply that with knowledge from everything through the financial services industry to the fishing industry. Now, we believe that the fundamental problem behind so much of this, and yes, of course, there are global trends. Yes, of course, these things are factors, but that there is a fundamental problem at the heart of the way this country is run. It's the people that are actually doing it. We're run by a group of human rights lawyers, not entrepreneurs. Virtually nobody on the front bench has ever taken a risk, ever borrowed money, ever set up a business, ever had to meet that monthly or weekly, depending what you do, payroll. There is no understanding at all the disconnect between the conversations in Westminster and, frankly, in much of the media too, and what is happening in the real economy is a gaping chasm. Well, I have to tell you, it's even worse when you think about who runs the departments. Oh, let's put a minister in charge of railways, shall we? They can oversee HS2. They've never worked in railways. They've no knowledge of railways. They haven't got a clue what they're doing. And yet, we managed to have 18 rail ministers in the space of 14 years. And this applies in department after department. People whose only qualification is to be a member of Parliament. As if that's enough. As if that's enough to give a lead, to give a guide over all the things that really matter in our life. Now, if we had a Parliament made up of more experienced people from a broader range of life, that may be okay. But the current convention that both parties stick with just simply doesn't work. In fact, frankly, you think about it, it really is a farce, isn't it? You're put in charge of a big department, and then after 14 months, when you've just about got your feet under the table, Keir Starmer, or whoever else it might be, decides to reshuffle you. And so my promise is that reform will not just think differently, but reform will do differently. We will sweep away these outdated conventions. We will become the most pro-business, pro-entrepreneurship government that has been seen in this country in modern times. We'll bring into government, as advisors or ministers, people with real business expertise in their own sector. And we will signal what we hope and believe and what we know we need to be a change of attitude in this country. A change of attitude towards hard work. A change of attitude towards making money. A change of attitude towards success. And I would like to think this would begin in our schools. that we'd have more national champions, that we'd take people who'd come from nothing and become successes and make them heroes, make them role models for younger people to follow. Because believe me, that is very, very badly needed indeed. And perhaps it's appropriate that this speech is being given in this magnificent old banking hall right here in the heart of the City of London. Now, it's a place that I know incredibly well, having spent much of my working life here, and generations of my family before me that worked here. It is a very special place because it symbolizes what is still, despite everything, Britain's biggest industry. We never talk about it. Parliament rarely debates it. Financial services are Britain's biggest industry. But what sad decline we are currently in. We have an EU rule book that is almost entirely in place. And that is interpreted by massively overzealous regulation. The costs of doing business in London, the costs of doing business in our financial services industry are now simply too high. And we're losing business to places all over the world, New York, the Far East, you name it. There is, of course, one booming sector here, though. That is HR and compliance. And Richard Tice and I were talking about this earlier. The FCA now incredibly have 5,000 staff. It was 2,000 staff when I left the city just over 20 years ago. And still we carry on with our outdated practices. We still have stamp duty on share transactions and wonder why IPOs and stock trading in London is in such serious state. We have an FCA keen now to push a diversity agenda, as if diversity in the city is what matters. Well, when I worked here, it didn't matter what religion you were. It didn't matter where you came from. It didn't matter what class you were. It didn't matter what colour you were. When I worked in the city, it was based on, are you good enough? It was based on being a meritocracy. And that coincided, I think, with London being at the most dominant position in financial services that it's been certainly in modern times. And then we have the banking industry. Not necessarily always been my favourites over the course of the last few years. But they, of course, are forced to implement 4 major European Union money laundering directives. All, of course, put in place with the very, very best of intentions, but that has led to the debanking of hundreds of thousands of individuals and tens of thousands of businesses across this country through no fault of their own, at the same time as the Turkish barbershops proliferate along with the cash car washes right across our country. Our regulators are using sledgehammers to miss the nut. It's just not working. And with the banks not able to act as they should, it's led to the growth of secondary lending, that market exploding, and something which I predict will come back to bite us very, very hard, as it did decades ago. And we've totally ignored the whole new world out there. Folks, it's happening. We're being left behind. There's a global boom in the trade in digital assets, in the use of stable coins, in the usage and investment in all forms of cryptocurrency. We've literally turned our backs on it, both the Bank of England and the FCA being guilty of this. The reason the city succeeded for hundreds of years is that it innovated, it took risk, it saw what the future direction of markets and consumer and customer and commercial demand would be. And we have done absolutely none of it. And frankly, I believe it's a disaster. We should be leading the world in these 21st century businesses. So our aim would be to sensibly deregulate a rule book that was written for the European Union, not written for the City of London, to think globally and to have a much more open debate with the Bank of England. It seems that Parliament thinks, oh, the Bank of England have got independence. Well, They've got independence over monetary policy. They don't have independence over fiscal policy. And it was Richard Tice that pointed out 18 months ago the vast sums of money unnecessarily being paid in interest to banks. And now we've moved to quantitative tightening. Well, they're on course to lock in losses of £150 billion. This has a major fiscal impact on this country. I haven't heard Rachel Reeves talk about it once, which, given she was 10 years a very senior economist over there, I must say I find very, very surprising, and a total rethink of what the FCA is. Markets need sensible regulation that users can trust. And you know something? They don't need a whole lot more than that. And don't forget, when I talk about the city, I'm not just talking about here and Canary Wharf. I'm not just talking about Mayfair. I'm not just talking about a few very high earners. I'm talking about an industry that employs hundreds and thousands of people in every major town and every major city in this country. That is how fundamentally important it is. The whole economy must encourage innovation. We must encourage ambition, and yes, dare I say it, risk-taking. Free markets work because people take risks. And if it goes wrong, it's not the job of governments to bail them out. It's the job of their shareholders and their bondholders to lose all of their stake. And we need so much more than that. But to be that kind of economy, we have to have the right people in our country. That breed of people that will take astonishing risk. That breed of people who'll give up their lives dedicated to a particular project that they wish to succeed. And the numbers on that aren't looking very good. The exodus is real. An estimated 16,500 very rich people will leave this country this year. But a total of about 80,000 people will leave this year seeking jobs, seeking work, seeking opportunity elsewhere around the world. And yes, many of our brightest, youngest, most ambitious people have simply had enough. We're living through a wealth drain, but we're also living again through a late 1970s style brain drain. And we intend to reverse all of that. The non-dom, and this is unpopular. You talk about this, oh, you can't just talk about rich people. Well, I'll tell you in a moment why we need to. The non-dom tax changes started, of course, by George Osborne, accelerated by Jeremy Hunt, finished off by Rachel Reeves, is a self-induced act of financial stupidity. These people pay their UK taxes. These people employ a lot of people. These people invest in British businesses and British industries. These people are the biggest spenders in the country. But off they go. Milan welcomes them with open arms, as has Lisbon over the course of the last few years. Athens now doing the same. Dubai, 250,000 Britons. 250,000 Britons now living in Dubai alone. And that's why we've introduced the idea of the Britannia card. A one-off payment for non-doms to come back, settle here, and pay all the relevant tax on their UK income. The same is true of those that are wealthy with assets. They're fleeing. They're scared of wealth taxes. But what they're even more scared of is retrospective tax changes. And it's happened. All through the 90s, I ran my own company. I put money aside every year. I didn't take the family to Barbados. I didn't buy the kind of cars I'd have liked. I put money aside. I thought, well, that's there for a pension, and if I snuff it, it's there for the family. That is now subject to inheritance tax. People are scared of retrospective taxation, and even scared now of the idea of an exit tax. But perhaps the biggest disaster are young professionals who are caught in the £100,000 a year tax trap, and young entrepreneurs who want to get on. They're leaving, and we want them back in this country. And this hard left socialist dogma that it's popular to tax the rich, that the rich won't move, they'll stay and pay more. That, I'm afraid, has infected virtually the entirety of our political class, and it's wrong. So let me make it clear. I want as many high-earning people as possible living in this country and paying as much tax as they legally have to. Because if the rich leave and the rich don't pay tax, then the poorer in society will all have to pay more tax. It's as simple as that, and what we're doing is crazy. And we need those people back, although I have to accept that coming back into London will need not just sensible tax rates, not just a government they fear, it'll need law and order on London's streets to be sorted out, something that Mayor Khan appears to be oblivious to, but is given by some now as another reason for leaving. London, the capital city of Britain, in which you're too scared to wear a watch walking down the street. Right at the heart of what we intend to do to reindustrialize Britain, using the fact we have rather greater knowledge, and we're not stuck to dogma in a way the other parties were, has to be to deal with the energy industry. It's as if a new religion overtook the Commons in Blair's time. It was reinforced by Call Me Dave, Vote Blue, Go Green. We then saw Theresa May put net zero into law without even having a vote on the floor of the House of Commons. It wasn't needed because everybody agreed. And now, of course, we have Ed Miliband, whose fanaticism has taken things to a whole new level. Well, he's in competition with Boris, who wanted us to be the Saudi Arabia of wind. Somehow they all seem to think they're saving the planet. The truth is, what they're actually doing is they are exporting carbon dioxide emissions to manufacturers in companies that operate under lower environmental standards. And just look what it's done to the price. And you'll hear evasion after evasion about the genuine cost of renewable, intermittent, unreliable, renewable energy. But our electricity prices are 4 times that of the United States of America, double that of most of our European competitors. And we've done this to ourselves. It is complete and utter madness. You can have as much solar and as much wind as you want. But frankly, the grid that we have, without spending 2 to 3 trillion pounds updating it, cannot cope with that intermittent energy, which is why we now pay wind turbines to turn off when there is too much wind. The lunatic cost of net zero is continuing deindustrialization. 3 or 4 more years of this, there'll be very little manufacturing left in Britain at all, believe me. And when you think about it, it's really quite mad, isn't it? Because we're not just seeing the closure of our refineries and everybody else, who, for many cases, energy contributes 40% of their overall bill. But we're even conning ourselves now. The Prime Minister talks about AI. We're going to be an AI centre. Oh, no, we're not. Because the new energies, the new industries, use more energy than the old, heavy manufacturing industries. If we want to be involved with data centres, with crypto, we're going to need to use more energy than we've ever done before. And even with this massive amount of expenditure that we've put through subsidy and much else into wind, for example, there were days in January this year when we were importing 25% of our energy, and it was coming from Norway, across the other side of the North Sea, and it was coming from Belgium and from Holland. At some point on the current course, energy won't just be expensive, but the lights actually will go out. So we will scrap all net zero subsidies. We will bring down the cost of energy. We will get rid of the insane North Sea taxes put on by Jeremy Hunt and then a bit added on the top by Rachel Reeves. Let's get the North Sea operating. Let's have a look at some of the new onshore gas fields that have been found in this country. That will produce tens of thousands of well-paid jobs. And we've given notice already to the renewables industry that the current insane AR7 round of wind auctions, where it would appear that Ed Miliband is happy to lock in for the next 20 years prices that are 30, maybe 40 or 50% higher than the current already exorbitant price. We've given notice to those companies that if we're in government, we will scrap those contracts. Longer term, we believe as a party in nuclear energy, but not the way the current non-businessmen and women in government and our administrations administer it. Just have a look at Sizewell, have a look at Hinkley Point, have a look at ballooning cost, have a look at time delay, and look to South Korea. South Korea do nuclear energy with no concessions to safety at 25% of the cost that the British do. Yes, there'll be obstacles with planning and much else, but we absolutely have to do this for our future. Our current politicians are not good enough. Our current politicians don't understand business. Our current politicians don't understand money. Just look at the continuing farce of HS2 to understand just how useless they really are. And we will, if we win that next election, bring in seasoned professionals, good not just at managing money, but with expertise in their own industry. We will bring in private sector specialist knowledge. Of that, there is no question. And generally on business, and I saw this in Brussels, and I'm seeing this too in Westminster, that government only listens to big business. It only listens, in fact, in most cases, to multinationals that aren't really British companies at all. They're the ones that have the ear of business. I guess they're the ones that provide the tickets for Wimbledon, the dinners, and all the rest of it. There is a huge ignored sector in this country, a sector who are the genuine engine for growth in the UK economy, a sector we cannot do without if we're to turn round the current dismal state of the British economy. They are rarely talked about. They are ignored, but they are put upon. Just think of the 30% increase that Mr. Hunt brought in for corporation tax, stifling reinvestment. Just think of this government saying their annual returns now must be quarterly returns with added bureaucracy and added costs. Yet the completely forgotten part of the British economy are the 5.6 million men and women that run small businesses, act as directors, or organise their lives as sole traders. They feel unwanted in almost every single way, and yet they're really important. 60% of employment in the private sector is provided by those 5.6 million small companies. They've been hammered by national insurance rules over the course of the last year, especially those working in hospitality and sectors such as that. And they are embattled by IR35 regulations designed by the Treasury and weak Conservative chancellors who assume that everyone out there who isn't working for a big firm is some kind of crook. Well, I'm sorry, but the IR35 rules are ridiculous. They're stifling innovation. They even drive some in their 50s just to throw their hands up and go into early retirement. We will be the party of small business. We will be the party of risk takers. And look, there is a fundamental, I think, misunderstanding in many, many ways about what business really is. It's as if, well, you're either for business in politics or you're for the worker in politics. It is a fundamental misunderstanding, frankly, at every level. Thriving businesses are good for their employees, and something that I don't think anybody on the front benches would even understand is that small businesses very often treat their employees as well as they would treat their own family. You know, I went through times of having to pay monthly payroll when my staff were earning a lot more than I was. But I wouldn't for a minute want to jettison any single one of them, but hold tight and wait for better times. And we are on the side of working people. We are the party of Alarm Clock Britain. And we want people who are out there working to be genuinely better off working than they are on a whole range of benefits. And it's perhaps on benefits as much as anything else that I was keen to do this speech today. There seem to have been several misunderstandings as to where Reform stands on benefits, as if we are the party that will throw around the money like confetti, based, I think, around my comments on the two-child cap and removing it. Now, no one actually listened to what I said. I mean, this happens, I know. But what I said was we should remove the two-child cap for British working couples. And what I meant by that is for lower-paid couples who are both working, the cost of childcare is exorbitant. It's a disincentive for having more children. It's a disincentive for going out to work. And so I thought a tax credit for a couple where both were working was actually a very, very pro-family policy in every single way. We have already announced cuts to welfare spending, but no one seems to have noticed. So let me use this opportunity to reiterate where we are this morning. My colleague Lee Anderson and Zia Youssef did a press conference earlier on this week dealing specifically with PIP claims, saying that we would take away claims from people who were on PIP for non-major anxiety. That policy alone, given the daily, weekly, monthly rate of new sign-ons, that policy alone would save us $9 billion a year by 2029 under current predictions. And in fact, all disability claims will have to be dealt with in person. All disability claims will have to be reassessed. There'll be no more Zoom, 5 or 10 minutes on a Zoom and be signed off with some sort of malady. And there'll be no more family GP feeling pressured into signing people off. It'll all be done by independent third party. And you don't think this matters? Well, just think about this. There has been a 50% increase in disability claims in Britain over the course of the last 5 years. We are over-diagnosing many of these things, and in doing so, throwing young British people onto a scrap heap marked victim and replacing what they could be doing by cheap imported foreign labour. It is madness, and I would further point to the Boris wave. Indefinite leave to remain that begins to kick in very, very shortly for 1 million or more people who are in this country who will be able to claim benefits for the whole of their lives and to bring in dependents as well. There are some think tanks that estimate this particular cohort could cost up to £200 billion over the course of their lifetime. So in terms of benefit cuts, I think we've just proposed the biggest benefit cuts you've probably ever heard any government do, and I will make this absolute promise. We will substantially cut the benefits bill. We will reduce the size of the public sector. We will look, as we've already started, at public sector pensions, which are a massive liability, and from the early work that Richard has done, we can see these funds are paying fees that are way out of line for what should be appropriate and being badly mismanaged. On the cost of living, we will cut people's energy bills. Now, Keir Starmer said he'd cut them by £300. They're up £285. And if Mr Miliband's wind plan comes in, we'll have locked in higher energy for decades to come. We reckon sensibly we could cut £165 per annum off everybody's electricity bill. But it's in the area of population explosion, it's in the area of mass migration where perhaps we can help a lot. A move towards net zero population increase through migration would ease pressure on rents. It would ease pressure on house price affordability. And we will commit to the biggest building programme of genuinely affordable housing in this country that has ever been seen. Our young people deserve nothing less. So look, we will cut spending. We will encourage growth and entrepreneurship. We want to cut taxes, of course we do. But we understand substantial tax cuts, given the dire state of debt and our finances, are not realistic at this current moment in time. There are some relatively modest things we would do. We would immediately remove IHT from family farms and from family-run businesses. And we will raise the thresholds at which people start to pay tax to begin the process of getting people out of the 16-hour-a-week working debt trap that so many people find themselves in. The state of the finances, the state of the economy is far, far worse than it was in the run-up to a 2024 general election. But be in no doubt, we are pro-business. Be in no doubt, we want work to be rewarded. Be in no doubt, we will do everything we can to bring back confidence and to bring back a change of culture around work, money and success in this country. And be in no doubt that we will have higher quality people in charge of areas over which they've got knowledge than we've seen in this country for many, many decades. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to take a few questions. The first one is Harry Farley from the BBC.
Thank you, Mr. Farage. Harry Farley from the BBC. A matter of months ago, you were talking about tax cuts worth billions of pounds. Now you say tax cuts at the moment are not realistic. How can people trust you when, just like the other parties you criticise, you promise something before an election and then reverse it when it looks like it's difficult?
I didn't say we couldn't afford tax cuts. I said we couldn't afford huge tax cuts. And I mentioned a couple of tax cuts right at the end that I think are vital to be put in place very, very early. You talk about responsible. Well, look, we haven't wrecked the economy. You know, we're not the ones with projected government borrowing that double what it was before the last general election, with unemployment at a 4-year high, with inflation pushing 4%, and with, frankly, yet another tax-raising budget around the corner that'll further dampen growth. So I would say this to you: we are being mature, we are being sensible, and we are not over-promising. But for us not to take account of the dire state of our public finances, that I think would be irresponsible. Do we want to have a smaller state? Yes. Are we going to cut the benefits bill? Yes. Will the civil service be smaller? Yes. Will we get a grip on public sector pensions? Yes. But we can't have massive tax cuts until the markets can see we've at least got these things in hand. Next is Joel Hills from ITV News.
Hello there, Joel Hills from ITV News. You share Richard Tice's concerns about the affordability of public sector pensions. Is your message to teachers, to police officers, to NHS staff, that if they vote reform at the next election, you will cut their pensions?
No, what I said was what we discovered so far through local government, and by the way, you'll be hearing much more about the massive savings we've made through local government out through this country as we come up to the 6-month anniversary of being in charge of 10 of those counties. What we discovered, and this is through, a fairly brief look at the way that the pension funds are run at a county level, is they are paying exorbitant, and I mean exorbitant fees to the pensions industry, which of course cumulatively over a 25 or 30-year period adds up to a very large chunk of the money, and we believe they're very badly administered. Our ambition is to make sure they save money and deliver better value. And you're going to hear more about this because Richard Tice will be giving a major speech at Bloomberg later this week, which will address this and many other issues. Thank you. Sam Coates, Sky News.
Thank you, Mr. Farage. You are the master of political reinvention. I mean, we've had Brexit Nigel and trade union Nigel and small state Nigel and nationalisation Nigel. They line up like Barbies on a toy shelf. Today we've got fiscal responsibility Nigel. Why should we trust that this Nigel Farage survives to and beyond the next general election when stuff gets jettisoned, when priorities change and political winds change?
I haven't jettisoned anything. I believe in pretty much the same sort of things I believed in 30 years ago. The difference to that is I now understand more than I did the role of the state in strategic industries. It's why Richard and I went to Scunthorpe. But if we hadn't gone to Scunthorpe, there would be no primary steel being made in Britain today. Have I adapted over 30 years into believing that the country needs an industrial strategy? Yes. Do I believe that actually, in certain failing industries, a short-term partial nationalisation where, by the way, the bondholders and shareholders get wiped out, it doesn't cost government to do it? Yes. So I think you'll find the shifts and changes that you're looking for quite difficult to find. I believe we have to be a competitive economy. I believe we have to have a hard work culture in this country. And I believe that unless business succeeds, the rest of the country can't succeed. A growing public sector does not make us richer. I think I've believed in that for almost 50 years, actually. Christopher Hope, GB News.
Nigel Farage, just on 2 points you raised there in your speech. You said you would raise thresholds, that's presumably income tax thresholds. In May, late May this year, you said you'd increase the basic rate threshold from £12,500 to £20,000. Does that still stand? That is the biggest commitment you've made on that area. And secondly, you haven't mentioned the pensions triple lock. You want to cut spending. Surely that is now under threat.
Okay, on thresholds, bear in mind that from 1988 until the end of Tony Blair's time in office, 1.5 million people paid 40p or more. 1.5 million people paid top rate tax. By the end of next year, 8 million people will be paying 40p or more. Just to give you an illustration of the extent to which the state has grown, the extent to which we're managing our economy terribly, the extent to which we've not allowed businesses to go out and thrive and succeed, so dragging everybody in. We will raise thresholds. I cannot tell you what the state of the economy will be as the next general election approaches. If I'm right, and that election comes in 2027, then the economy will be in an even worse state than any of us in this room can even predict. So how can anybody project on pensions or thresholds or any of those things between now and then? What we will do and what we can do is to use whatever muscle we've got to fight and urge this government to change direction, to ease the burden on small business, being just one example. And there are many things that we've said and done over the course of the last year that have led to government and opposition following what we say. So maybe we can change things slightly by debate, by force of reason, by opinion poll strength, although I suspect that with this Chancellor and with this Prime Minister, they're so torn between their old Labour voters going reform and their left-wing voters going for a Polanski, your party, whatever it may be, alliance, that I expect what we'll see more of is a government with no vision that just floats around but then U-turns when it gets the chance. OK, I'm going to go to Sam Merriman from the Mail.
Hi. Is the minimum wage too high? Would reform lower it or scrap it to boost aspiration?
Sorry, say that again.
Is the minimum wage too high? Would reform lower it or scrap it to boost aspiration?
There's an argument the minimum wage is too high for younger workers, particularly given that we've lowered the level at which NIC is paid to $5,000 a year. So do one or the other. Do one or the other. Either lift the cap at which NI is due, or lower the minimum wage for lower workers. But you know what? I'd say this to the Chancellor: do something. Do something. Because for so many young people, that first job, and it can be in a pub or wherever it may be, it's a very, very important part of growing up, becoming part of a working, contributing adult. So I would urge the Chancellor to do one of those two things. Aubrey Allegressi from The Times.
Thank you. Aubrey Allegressi from The Times. I wanted to ask you about your nationalisation policy, which you set out earlier this year. You committed again in July to nationalising half the water industry, and you've talked since about nationalising the steel industry as well. How much would both of those things cost? Can you afford them if you're standing here and telling us about how you're going to be fiscally constrained? And are you signalling to workers that nationalisation is sometimes in the best interests of the taxpayer?
Nationalisation should only be used as an emergency measure. Of that I have no doubt at all. In the case of steel, if something hadn't happened, literally within a couple of days, this country would not be a primary producer of steel, the only major Western country that would not be a primary producer of steel. Now, I have heard in the last week that the government are going to begin to do some energy deals with one or two of the biggest users. But that, of course, is simply attacking the symptom of the problem and not the cause. It's the energy prices that heavy industry can't stand. Water's a different case. That's Thames Water, who have lost all credibility morally and financially. And our plan was, as I say, it wouldn't cost us anything. We'd wipe out the shareholders and look for new partners. OK, Ryan Saby from The Sun.
Thank you. You talk about being pro-business and also pro-worker. Where do you stand on employment rights legislation? Would you scrap it? Would you water it down, especially when business says that the government estimates say it will cost £5 billion?
I said earlier on that government only listens to big business. And can very big business absorb the cost, the increased burden